All right, we are concluding our series, our teaching part of the series tonight on winning the war in your mind, and I get to talk about calm my anxious mind. And I'll tell you why, but I'm actually really looking forward to getting to talk with you about this. But let's talk through some statistics because statistics make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. 27% of adults in a survey in 2022 that the American Psychological Association put out said that they were so stressed most days that they couldn't function. 27% of adults. Of those, the number was, I made this way too small for me to see my own notes. 46% under 35 feel that way. That means the majority of the people who responded, right, were under 35 years old. And I'm going to give you my theory on why that is in a second, and it's only a theory. 13% of people are diagnosable with anxiety disorder, according to Fuller Seminary and their counseling center. And for the last 3 years, an average of 37% of adults in the U.S. have reported feeling more anxious than the year before. All right, that's heavy. That's heavy. We're going to talk tonight, and I'm going to talk to, there's probably two groups, or really a sliding scale perhaps in the room. There's some of you who the butterflies land on your shoulder in the morning, and then they depart at night, and you don't feel anxious. We'll talk to you, don't worry, okay? There's others of you that like vultures land on your shoulder in the morning, and the vultures don't depart at night, and we're going to talk to you as well. So whatever kind of camp you're in, don't worry, you're in the right room, don't leave. We're going to talk to all of you, but I really do think that we need to at least understand this first, that there is a change going on in the world around us, and a change in our young people. And I don't think it's that TikTok made anxiety trendy. I really don't believe that, okay? I don't think it just became cool to share your anxiety and I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of this. I really think that maybe beyond that is we live in a world that is changing. And you guys seem to say it, and I hear it from many of you. Why would we then not assume that those who grew up in a more difficult world wouldn't feel that viscerally inside them? Young people who grew up don't remember a life before 9/11, the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, a war that went on for years and years and years, a world that got so much more expensive, a world where all the norms that we were used to are no longer normal. Nothing's normal. There is no normal, and that's what's normal. That's a hard world to live in. It's also hard to live in a world where you have abundant choice, where you can choose anything from anywhere to do with anything. There's something called the paradox of choice, which is actually the idea that more choices make you less happy because you just have more things that you have to say no to and more problems in how to say yes. The paradox of choice. We have abundant wealth. We're more wealthy than really ever in history, and what we'll see tonight by the end is that anxiety largely comes from the fear of losing something, and so when you have much more to lose, you have much more to be anxious about. And we live in a society that's increasingly individualistic and isolating, that it tried to offer us all the here's my gift of you can be whatever you want, do whatever you want, define yourself however you want, whatever you want, whatever you want, whatever you want. And we thought that that was freedom, and what we really learned was that it was isolation. And it told us that you're alone, you're alone, you're alone. You live in a little bubble all by yourself in which you define everything, and all truth is up to you. That is the most isolating statement you can possibly make. And so we tried to raise several generations of people with all of those factors, and then we go, they just think anxiety's trendy. No, our young people are deeply and viscerally needing something to help with this problem. And so let's look. I don't have a magic bullet, by the way, for anxiety. I'm not that good, and this is free, so I don't have that. I'm also not going to give you any we're not going to talk about techniques and tips and tricks and anything that I feel like you could just go Google afterwards. And I'm not going to give you anything, not that those things aren't right, it's just not worth my very limited time tonight. I really think you can go get those things. You really can. And they're fine. And go do them. However, I want to give you stuff tonight, not stuff. I really want to give you scripture tonight, things that I would say to you because I'm assuming that you know the Lord. And so we want to go a little bit deeper. There are lots of angles that we can take on anxiety, lots of things that let's focus on this or this or this. Not bad, but I only have time to focus on one thing. And so we're going to actually really hone in on the idea tonight of treasure. And so let's talk a little bit. Why am I excited about talking about this? I got to pick my topic. Brian sent me and Andrew Paulson you want these things? And I was like, I want the anxiety one, because this is a big part of my story. Maybe I'll lose my job by the end of this. Brian's back there. He can decide. But really, I've actually found it a help in my office with people, with those who deal with this. I really can identify. So when I was 11 years, I was always this intense kid. Just my whole life, as long as I can remember, I was just very serious and very intense, and things they mattered, and I cared, and I cried, and I just was very intense. When I was about 11, I had this giant just life mental kind of crisis. I actually had like a mental breakdown when I was 11. I don't talk about this ever very often. The things now, if I said like this is what it was, maybe sound kind of like, oh, I wouldn't have a mental breakdown over that. But I was 11 and I was intense. And so part of it was I was really grappling with our faith and could I believe our faith? And I'd be up in the middle of the night having panic attacks and vomiting because even though I'd never heard the phrase panic attack, because I didn't know if anything I'd ever been taught was true. That's an alarming thought, okay? I also just was deeply, deeply afraid of the devil and demons and really believed that I could be possessed and didn't know that that's not what the Bible teaches, but I was 11, right? When I learned that, I felt a lot better, but still very, very afraid of anything evil, anything occulty, anything. And, remember the Satanic Panic? My house was like the headquarters for the Satanic Panic. We were really into that. And so everything was scary in our house. Everything was be afraid of it, right? And that's kind of how I grew up, was like, this is bad, therefore be afraid. And my parents were great parents. They did a lot of good. They raised me in the church, but we were kind of on the tail end of that panic and we panicked, okay? So I had kind of a mental breakdown a little bit. Nowadays, I probably would have sent me to a psychologist, but we didn't do that really. And so I talked to one of our pastors. That was kind of helpful, but it was just this long, prolonged thing. Then I got really sick for about 2 years. I was just really sick. To this day, I'm pretty much convinced my brain was like, let's get sick. We are so upset for so long. Let's go to the hospital for a while, right? That's kind of what I think happened. I really don't know. I'm not a doctor. But yeah, I was ill for about 2 years. Missed most of 5th grade. Still don't know Canadian geography because of this. All that to say, it was probably the most difficult thing I've gone through. My mom got sick after me. She died 2 years later. This may sound cold, but I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. I think that deep anxiety, I was like non-functional. I think that was worse than losing my mom. Somehow I had context and I had people around and we were going through the same thing over here. This one was incredibly isolating. People didn't understand, and it was pretty terrible. So I just want you to understand, this isn't me like, feel bad for me or give me a hug later. I'm not actually much of a hugger. This is me saying, if you're like, because I've had people say this, right? Well, you're a pastor. You would never understand. Actually, I think what makes good pastors is people who have really suffered. I really do. Jesus, it's predicted in Isaiah 53, before he comes, he will be acquainted with grief, a man of sorrows. I really think to help people, you have to understand the depth of difficulty. We don't understand all difficulties. There's things I don't identify with and I don't understand. But this one's close to my heart. And so when someone comes and talks to me and says, I'm suffering from anxiety and you wouldn't get it, I go, oh, I don't know you, and I don't know your life, and I don't know your story, and I don't know what makes you anxious, but I do understand what that's like. I do understand feeling like you need to get up and flee and run, but there's nothing to run from exactly. And when you run and flee, you're just there with you, and so it didn't really work anyway. I get that. I get that 3 a.m. stuff. I get that can't eat, can't sleep. I understand that. I'm functional now, so don't be like, we should probably get rid of this person. We should probably not have him teaching us. The Lord's brought me a long way, but I just want you to understand where I'm coming from a little bit, okay? Now, you may have not understood what I just said. You may be like, that's not my experience. The butterflies come, and I love them, and I kiss, rabbits, and it's just the best. I have the best. Everything's the best, and it's the best. Let me say this. Anxiety will come for you, okay? Chronic, ongoing anxiety may not come for you. But you never know what's coming. I've talked to so many people in crisis, and they'll say often the same thing: I never thought this would happen to me. Well, it's got to happen to somebody, because the other person it happened to, they never thought it would happen to them either. They were caught by surprise as well. You may be caught by surprise. And what I'm going to say by the end is that there's something that you treasure so deeply, that you fear losing so viscerally, that when that thing is threatened, you will feel anxious. I also want to say that anxiousness, and I'll talk about this next, anxiousness is normal, and it's a part of actually how God designed us. It keeps us alive. So let me get there. You have a little almond-sized thing in your brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is this little, you remember Princess Bride? If you were around, okay, in the 80s? Prince Humperdinck had a great line that I live by. This is my motto in life. He says, I always think that everything could be a trap, which is why I'm still alive. Right? That's the amygdala. The amygdala is the thing that you go like, ah, right? And you get startled and you jump. And you like, oh, survive, snake, bat, spider, right? And you like, scary thing. That's built into you so that you will jump when a snake is there, right? Like, this is good if you just like, snake. Who knows what's going to happen? What kind of snake is that? So if you're like me, you jump and you flee and you, right? This thing, okay? So we need this. You're designed for a little bit of fear. A little bit of fear is good, right? My daughter right now is like in this fear mode. I don't know why. She's decided, she used to love ladybugs. Now she wants to kill all ladybugs. And all bugs are just scary. So, but why is that? It's something is built into her that it's starting to like turn on now. It used to be that you had to startle her. Now she's like, oh, now I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of this. There's this little almond in there that bothers us. You also have the prefrontal, I'm not a doctor, but here we go. Prefrontal cortex. And this is a little bit of logic. So this is your Han Solo a little bit, right? Han Solo doesn't want to know the odds. Han Solo, did y'all watch Star Wars too in the 80s? Yes? You've watched 80s movies? Yes? Okay. Just checking if you like, some people don't do Star Wars, which is a problem. Okay. Han Solo, right? Never tell me the odds. I don't need to know. I don't need like, well, I don't know if this is I went back and forth on this slide, but by the time I was done, I was done. Your prefrontal cortex does kind of want to know the odds, but it's not going to just freak out. It needs a reason, right? It's going to think through this, like, what kind of snake is that? Oh, that's a non-harmful snake. I'm okay. We're actually in a pet store, and there's glass between us, right? We're okay. We can do this, okay? You should see me around snakes. I'm still scared don't do it. I want you to, if you're like, no, again, butterfly mode, I don't do that. I never, ever, nothing phases me. So, you know what's so great about you is you are so much more tough than Jesus is. So let me talk about Jesus and his anxiety for a second, okay? I know it's kind of snarky. My wife tells me, like, don't talk like that, so I'm sorry. She's back there, she's nice, okay? I can be a lot sarcastic. Okay. Let me give you, and we're going to learn 3 Greek words for anxiety tonight, because there's 3 different modes that we want to talk to, and it's very important that we understand the difference in these things. So this is our first word in Greek. Don't worry, I'll give it to you in English. John 11:33 says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews this is Mary, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. Deeply moved is a different word, really more means anger. Greatly troubled is the word tarasso, and it means agitated, shaken inside. Oh, this isn't right. I'm off, right? You've all had that, like you get the email and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have read that right before bed. Now I got to think about that one all night, right? It's that, okay? He's tarasso. Which kind of sounds it sounds like you're shaking, like, tarasso this for me, will you? Tarasso the salad for me. It's kind of this shaky, like, whoa, okay. John 12:27. Now is my soul troubled. Same word, tarasso. Now is my soul shaken, agitated. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose I have come to this hour. Anybody know the context of this? Garden of Gethsemane, right? A word I can never spell, Gethsemane. He's tarasso, he's shaken. So this word is a serious word. He's not in the garden being like, I feel kind of bad. I feel a little bit, I just want to go like watch my favorite show right now. This is a big deal in the garden, okay? Which brings us to actually, let's keep going. After saying these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. I guess I should have chronologicalized these, but right, he knows he's about to be betrayed, about to be arrested, again, terrasso. And then this one's a little bit longer, John 22, 40 through 46, again in the garden. And when he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, this is an easy Greek word, agonia, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. This is a thing called hematohydrosis, where your capillaries break into your sweat glands and you can sweat out the blood in extreme situations. And when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. You ever been so anxious you need to take a nap? I have. But how isolating is that? He comes back to his guys and they're all asleep. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation." So this word is actually the strongest word you can use. It overlaps, though, with the idea of depression, right? We'll talk about this in a second, but anxiety and depression are twin forces, okay? So here, it's ramping up with Jesus. He's in agony. This word does not usually denote physical agony, and he's not really there yet. He's in emotional turmoil, emotional agony. So I want you to understand that not only does Andrew understand, Jesus really understands that level. I don't understand that level, but Jesus understands your level of anxiety. So we're going to look today, though, at a few things in Philippians 4 through 9. But we're going to start with 4 through 6. Philippians 4, you can turn there if you like, but it will be on the screen for your convenience. Philippians 4 through 6, I'm just going to take the beginning of 6. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything." Okay. When we read this, it sounds really straightforward and really simple. And we go, okay, this is saying, don't be anxious about anything. Don't be agitated about anything. Don't be shaken about anything. Or don't be agonizing about anything. But this is actually our third Greek word. So we have terrasso, we have agonia, and then we have this one, which I can't remember, so it is perimnao. You don't have to remember that either. But I want you to understand this word, because otherwise you're going to really misunderstand this verse. This verse is not saying don't ever be upset. Don't ever be shaken. Don't ever feel anxiety. Anxiety's wrong. And if you would just trust Jesus, that would be better. That's not what this verse is saying. Perimnao is actually a word that I think the simplest, I read all this stuff and I was like, what's the simplest word I can use? And the simplest word I could use would be obsess or dwell. So now I got two simple words. But this is the idea of, it's also sometimes used of raising children, actually. You concern yourself with a child. Now, you should be concerned with your children, right? You should take care of them. This is the idea of taking something else in your life and meditating on it so much, thinking about it so much, caring about it so much, it's as though it's also your child. You are obsessed with this thing. This thing has become the thing. This thing you contemplate, you ruminate. At 3 a.m. it's there with you. And at 4 a.m. it's there with you. And all day long and all through your life, it's there for you. You hold it and cultivate it and take care of it, even though it's just there poisoning you. You are obsessed and dwelling on this thing. This is a strong word. So I'm not a Greek scholar. I took Greek in school. I didn't learn a lot because it's really hard. I'm going to try to learn it more in my off time. But I can maybe make an accusation here. I don't know if don't be anxious about anything is the best translation. The problem is English doesn't have that many words to use for this. So really, I need you to understand what this is saying, because otherwise you're going to miss the rest of the message. So nod with me that you got it. Yes, this word means dwell, obsess, ruminate. You know what all those are, right? Yes. Okay, you guys are so good. All right. Let's go forward. Okay. Anxiousness, let's go back. I'm going to change my mind a lot. Anxiousness is different from obsession, okay? Again, just to reiterate, we are not talking about don't ever feel anxious. We are not talking about don't ever have a hard time. We are not talking about the vultures have been there for a long time and they don't seem to go away. that you could snap your fingers, pray hard enough, read enough of the Psalms, and the vultures will go away. I'm not saying that at all. I'm also not saying that there's not a place. Is that what I mean? Yes. There's a place, because that amygdala thing, for some people, for different reasons, that thing is a big thing. It may be almond-sized, but in your brain, it's like it's bigger, okay? And there are different causes of that, and I'm not going to get into that because I'm not really qualified. However, for some folks, there is definitely a reason to go talk to a health professional. And if for some of us as evangelicals, we go, no, that's dealing with a soul problem like it's a body problem. Actually, in the Bible and in the Hebrew mindset, the body and the soul are so inextricably linked, they can only be separated by death. And so there is a place to say that because those are so linked, sometimes you do approach from a body angle, and sometimes you approach from a soul angle, and I really think we can approach from both angles, but I don't want you to walk out of here going, that guy said, I just have a treasure problem, therefore I just am out of whack with the Lord. That's not necessarily the case. I'm not here to diagnose you. I am here just in the limited time I have to talk about basically this word and this passage and use it to talk about anxiety. Is that clear enough? Wonderful. You are so responsive. I'm so glad. Yes. Okay. Anxiety is different from obsession. When we obsess over something, it is a clue to what our treasure is. There is something in you, and we're gonna ask about. I'm not gonna ask you out loud, but I'm gonna ask you to think about it at the end of what that thing is. What is that thing that is so precious? Can I make? Is it too late for me? If I made a '80s reference, I can make a Lord of the Rings reference, right? Remember the precious? That was like such a good picture of our life, really, the precious, the thing. And so tonight we're gonna talk about your treasure. I won't call it your precious, but it's really what it is. Our treasure ought to be, is really, and is most fully the Lord. That's why this says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say rejoice. He's repeating it twice because it's so important. We rejoice ultimately only in the Lord. Our treasure says, rejoice in me. Rejoice in me. Your anxiety often is a clue to what that treasure is. The anxiety is saying, this is the most important thing you can never lose. And this is the most important thing I can never lose, that's the treasure. And if that treasure isn't the Lord, whom you will never lose, then our treasure is out of whack, right? So our treasure is in the Lord. For those of you who have the butterfly thing, and the butterflies come and you're like, I don't need to listen to this message, let me tell you, some of those folks, some of you folks, some of us folks, it's not really me, but it may be you, that strength, that's your treasure. That reputation of I'm tough, I'm an island, I'm a rock, that's your treasure. That I've got this all together, I've got it figured out, I've got this world licked, that's your treasure. And guess what? Weakness will come. Whether it comes now or it comes with old age, weakness will come. And when weakness comes, that treasure of strength will be challenged and you will experience the anxiety of losing that treasure. So no matter who you are, no matter when it is, at some point, you will be faced with this because your treasure will be threatened, okay? If you're like really strong and you're like, I'm type A. Do you know where type A comes from? Do you know where that originates from? It was what do they call heart doctors? Cardiologists. It was a cardiology experiment. They had people in different groups, and type A was the group they decided was most likely to have a heart attack. So even if you're strong and you're type A, anxiety will get to you, right? Stress will get to you, okay? All right, just a little factoid. All right. Anxiety is a clue to weightier things. It's a clue to weightier things, okay? So because it's a clue to weightier things, anxious people, let me tell you one of the strengths of people who are anxious. So if you have the vultures on your shoulder, let me tell you one of the strengths of anxious people. And it's that anxious people really do concern themselves with things that matter. They often don't, they're not frivolous. They don't just throw money away, sometimes maybe, but they tend to care about things that matter. That's a good thing. That's a strength. But what happens is anxiety meets depression when those important things become everything. Proverbs 12:25 says so presciently, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down or causes depression, but a good word makes him glad. So because anxiety is a clue to what you hold most dearly, there can be a few outcomes of this. One, everything becomes important. Everything is about the important thing and is therefore equally important. Here's what I mean. You think about important things, so one of those you're really concerned about. So what can happen is everything becomes about the important thing. right? I'm really concerned about money, and so now if I'm just a little bit late, I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose the money. I'm really concerned about, my kids' health, so now if I bought the wrong toothbrush, they're going to die, right? And so everything becomes about the main thing, and therefore everything is given equal importance, but not everything is equally important. The second thing that can happen is that only the main thing becomes important, and everything else is brushed aside. All I can think about is the thing that I'm thinking about, and nothing else and no one else can get in here because I'm locked in on the thing, okay? And then the last thing that can happen is that the anxiety replaces the main thing. So I somehow, and usually we don't notice when it happens, but it's subtle, I went from this is my main concern to that got kind of shoved out, and now the anxiety is my main concern, right? And that is incredibly depressing because when the anxiety doesn't go away, I've spent all this mental capital on the main concern, which is the anxiety, and just a cycle of, but that's the main concern. And so we get locked in, and that just can cause us depression, right? So far we've learned our treasure, we'll come back to this, our rejoicing, our treasure is in the Lord. 4:6b through 9b just means the second part of the verse. It says, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Yes, where am I? I can't look down and up. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. We're going to look at several things in here. The first one is that thanksgiving reroutes our anxiety. Thanksgiving reroutes our anxiety, okay? Why? What's the role of thanksgiving? AP gave us a great quote last week, so I'm quoting AP. He said, if truth defeats lies, thanksgiving defeats negative thinking. Why? Anxiety fears loss. We fear that something we hold dear will be taken from us, okay? Thanksgiving, though, rejoices in the grace already given. Thanksgiving says, but I have this. And we're going to come back and we're going to zero in on that. Boy, time goes back quick in here. But I want you to understand that Thanksgiving knows what it's already been given in the Lord. Anxiety fears what might be taken from me. Second thing is that all of us is guarded through a peace beyond logic. That amygdala functions below the logic level. The amygdala doesn't go, what kind of snake is that? It just goes, and it jumps. And you're meant to do that, right? There's a survival mechanism in there, but that's a sub-logic thing, right? That level of anxiety is good and healthy. It functions under the level of logic. But here, the Lord is going to say, I'm not even going to take you to cerebral cortex. What was that one? It was a prefrontal cortex, right? I'm not going to go up to the level of logic where we just get really logical and think about things logically. I will talk about truth in a second because truth has a role. But we're not just going to the level of logic. God says, I want to take you above the level of logic, which is to the peace that passes understanding. The peace that goes beyond what you understand. The peace that goes beyond figuring it all out. Because you're never going to figure it all out. I love figuring things out. I get super irritated and frustrated when there's something I can't figure out. And there are lots of things. Fixing stuff is like astrophysics to me. But being anxious is not about just figuring it out. That's why I am not going to give you little Google things that you can learn to just do. Go do that. And there is some level of logic. We're talking about truth. But this, I want you to understand, God is going to guard your hearts and minds through a peace that goes beyond logic, a peace that passes understanding. That's something that only He can do. That's why I get to talk to you as believers, as people who follow the Lord, because you can function on that level because you have the Holy Spirit in you to say, I can't get the vulture off my shoulder and I can't replace him with butterflies, but I know a God who's here with me and I know a God who can give me peace when I don't have any. The last thing is that truth, we're going to talk about truth. He says, think about these things. Truth and action will free us from hypotheticals. Anxiety is hypothetical. It's hypothetical. It feels very real. It's not real. It's what if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if this makes this happen, and what if this and this and this, so I really better buy the right toothbrush. That's what it is. It's all a hypothetical. But truth is above a hypothetical. And so truth releases us from that chain of hypothetical things, as does action. And so here we have truth and action. Action is not hypothetical. Getting over the anxiety is not really the goal. Just not feeling anxious is not the goal. Jesus was tarasso. Jesus was in agonia. Jesus was not perimneo. Jesus was not dwelling and obsessing on something of this earth, something of this world, something that didn't really ultimately matter. But nevertheless, if he's anxious, then we are going to be anxious as well. But I want you to understand that you have the choice in what you will do. And the anxiety will lock you into, you can do nothing, stay here, and don't talk to any, or don't help any, you can't just, nobody else exists. This is what exists. It's incredibly narrow. Because it's so narrow, it makes you more isolated. Being more isolated makes you more anxious. It's a trap. It's a trick. It's something in our psyche that is lying to us. And the reality here is saying, hey, okay, well, hold on. What's true? What's honorable? What's just? What's pure? What's lovely? What's commendable? What's excellent? What's worthy of praise? I want you to think about those things. Meditate on those things. Dwell on those things. Paramneo on those things. Sit and obsess with those things. That takes practice. That takes time. I have not mastered this. That's what it's saying. What is true? What is true? Anxiety can be two things. It can be debilitating, and it can make you be in yourself and in your head, and that's it. Or it can actually be a catalyst. It can be a catalyst to drive you to grow, because we grow when we're in pain, and anxiety is painful. It can drive you to intimacy with the Lord, because anxiety is isolating, and the Lord says, I understand, come be with me. And it's in our trials that we turn to the Lord. And your anxiety can drive you to be all in your world, or to care for others, because you go, wait a minute, everybody else has a vulture too. Even the butterfly people, you're all wrong. It's there. The vulture's it's there. It's somewhere. How can I reach out to them? How can I deal differently? I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You don't have to answer these out loud. I don't want you to. I want you to think about these for a minute. We have limited time, but we're going to use it. We're going to use it for this, okay? I want you to think about these things. Number 1, what are you really afraid of losing? If anxiety is a fear of, I may not have this, or this may happen, what are you really afraid? And I want you to, and this may be homework, you may need some time to answer this question, because it's not the immediate thing you first think of, okay? Let me give you an example. I fear, you're just learning a lot about my inner life today. I fear poverty. I don't fear poverty because I'm afraid of being poor. I could be poor. I fear poverty because if I were poor and I wasn't taking care of my family, people wouldn't respect me. I fear being dishonored. I fear being not respected, mainly by men older than me. Weird. So there's Andrew's psyche, right? Okay. What's under there, right? What are you really afraid of losing? What's the paramneo? What's the thing that you're going, I can't lose that. I could never lose that. That would be the end of me. That would be worse than death. I can't lose that. I want you to think, if you can't think of it now, don't answer me. Think about it this week. That's your homework. And you can take a photo when I get all 3 questions up. Second thing, what better thing has God given you? The thing that the treasure. Anxiety is a clue to your treasure. When you find your treasure, what better thing has God given you? If Andrew's afraid of being dishonored and disrespected, I have a God who says that I've made you an inheritor of the world with me, that you and I co-inherit. You are Jesus' brother, a part of the firstborn. You will inherit a world you don't even understand, a new heavens and a new earth, purpose and meaning and glory, Romans 8:18 says. You will inherit that with me. How could I then be like, but what if I can't pay my bills on time and my dad thinks I'm a bad dad? Who cares, right? What has God given that's better than your treasure? Third question, what specifically do you need to ask him for? Philippians here says, with thanksgiving, make your request known. What is it? Be specific. Because here's what we do sometimes, and I want you to try this when you pray. Go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm afraid of this, because if this happens, this will happen, and this will happen. At some point, you're going to start feeling silly, right? At some point, Lord, I'm afraid that if I buy the wrong toothbrush, my kids' teeth will fall out, and then they'll be ugly, and no one will marry them, and they'll have to live with me till they're 45, and, I'm just, Lord, I'm afraid. At some point, things are going to get silly, okay? At another point, you're going to get serious, and you're going to find that treasure. And so, what is it you specifically need to ask the Lord for? It could be small. Lord, I need my tires to not wear out. Okay, no, I'm serious. If that's your prayer, then be specific and say, Lord, I need my tires to go until I can afford new tires. Wonderful. That's your prayer. Be specific. Ask the Lord for that. But if your prayer is deeper than that, and that's fine too. If your prayer is deeper and it's, Lord, I am horrified of asking for help with the tires, or I am terrified of, it's not my child's teeth, Lord. I'm afraid my child will die. I just have this fear of losing them because I have nothing more valuable than that. That is everything to me. It's my identity. It's everything. I could never lose it, or it would be worse than death, Lord. I can go that deep with you. Then ask the Lord to save your child. Then ask the Lord this. I would go deeper than that too. You can go there, right? All these are good. It's all good. But I'd go even deeper. Lord, be the treasure to me, so valuable. Let me learn what it is to rejoice in you so truly, not as an idea, not as something Andrew said, not as like, that's nice, Philippians. Let me rejoice in you so fully and so deeply that there's nothing in this world I could not lose. Because this is the same book that Paul says, I count everything I had in the world, and I had a lot. I count everything I had as rubbish for the sake of knowing Christ. Lord, let me come to a place where you are my treasure, where you are my treasure. That is so much easier said than done. I'm not at that place either, I'll be honest with you. But that is my hope. That's what we're called to. Because you know why we're called to it? Because it's there. Because Jesus is saying, I am that treasure I am more than you can even ask or think. I'm going to reward you. I'm going to teach you what it is to rejoice in me. And we just have to say, okay, teach me how to do that. Help me do that. He's going to answer that prayer. He's going to answer that prayer. Let me pray and we'll be done. Holy Father, forgive us. Forgive us for not having you be the treasure we obsess over, but we don't know how to obsess over you well. And so would you replace the treasures in our heart that we could not lose? It would be a fate worse than death. Lord, you took the fate worse than death for us. And so, Lord, would you show us how to rejoice in you in small blessings and great blessings and things we have now, things we will have in the future, things you've been faithful through in the past? Would you reroute our anxiety back to Thanksgiving, back to truth, back to you? Lord, I pray for anybody in the room who, because of the fallen nature of our bodies, is suffering anxiety to the extent that they're not functioning well, that they're not able to live a life full like you promised them, and it seems so fleeting and so depressing that what you promised seems not true. Lord, would you reach down through others, through whatever means, and would you be with, be in, be moving forward, and be bringing people through whatever means of support to help each of those people represented here tonight. For those, Lord, who've been cavalier and thought, this will never touch me, Lord, would you be preparing their heart for when that day does come, that you would be their treasure in that day. We thank you that you will reward us that much. We pray that we'll see it. We pray that you will calm our anxious minds, and we thank you so much that that's what you do. We ask this all in your Son's name. Amen.